Hello everyone, my name is Liam Madden, and for my global challenge I decided to go to the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation located in Dearborn, Michigan. Before I get into what I saw there, first let me tell you about the history of the museum itself. It was founded on October 21st, 1929 by Henry Ford himself. The 523,000 square foot building was constructed over the next 4 years and officially opened to the public on June 22nd, 1933. All of the exhibits were finished by the end of the 1940s. Alongside the indoor museum, Henry Ford also opened Greenfield Village next door in June of 1933. In 1969, the Museum Village complex was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1981, it was designated a National Historic Landmark. The Henry Ford Academy opened inside the complex in 1997, not to be confused with the Henry Ford College, which is also in Dearborn. That's located next to U of M Dearborn. Hopefully I don't get marked down for mentioning U of M in my class. In 2003, the Ford Rouge factory opened a visitor center, and you can pay $20 at the museum to take what is called the Ford Rouge factory tour. Now, it is important to note that these are all listed as separate experiences, and my presentation is about the museum specifically. So the first thing I saw was the Demexian House. The Demexian House was originally designed in 1927 by Buckminster Fuller. The first house of this type was built in 1945. There were only 2 ever built. The design was meant to be futuristic and was primarily built out of aluminum due to it being lightweight, flexible, and not using lumber would save wood. The home was also fireproof, it was easy to mass produce, and it was said to be earthquake-proof. And in addition to all that, Buckminster said that it could potentially survive winds of up to 180 miles an hour. Now, there were some cons to the house, however. First of all, it was expensive. It costed $6,000 back in 1945, which is $86,000 today. And in addition to that, it's made out of aluminum. So despite the fact it was made to be stormproof, aluminum attracts lightning. So theoretically, it would get struck by lightning a whole lot. Also, the investors pulled out, so he had trouble getting money. Although the Demexian House never caught on, a similar design was eventually used for the Spaceship Earth attraction at Epcot in Disney World, Florida. The next thing I looked at was a historic McDonald's sign which was located next to some information about the history of fast food. In the 1950s, McDonald's changed the restaurant industry forever with what they called the Speedy system. Throughout the next decades, McDonald's, along with other fast food chains, were able to serve Americans with inexpensive, good-tasting, and convenient food. It was not all good, however. Most things on the menu at McDonald's and other fast food restaurants are high in fat, calories, and sodium. In fact, due in part to the decades that Americans have spent eating fast food, the U.S. is now actually considered the most obese country on earth. And it's not just obesity. Eating too much fatty food, such as the one served at McDonald's, can increase your risk of heart disease and diabetes, not to mention the fact that everything they have at McDonald's is processed, and if you eat in excess of processed food, you can actually raise your risk of cancer. The last thing I looked at was the very vehicle that John F. Kennedy was assassinated inside of. The car is a 1961 Cadillac convertible manufactured by the Ford Motor Company in Dearborn, Michigan. It was specifically modified for presidential use. On November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, Kennedy was riding in this exact car in a parade. At 12:30 p.m., Kennedy was shot in the head. The car raced to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead 30 minutes later at 1 p.m. In the aftermath of the shooting, the car was taken to a local Ford dealership and preserved as evidence. It later underwent restoration and was eventually donated to the Henry Ford, where it is still on display to this day. At the end of the day, I had a very fun experience at the Henry Ford. I would highly recommend that everyone here goes to check it out if you haven't already. The best way, in my opinion, to experience the Henry Ford is to spend 1 day dedicated to the museum, 1 day dedicated to Greenfield Village, and 1 day dedicated to the Ford Rouge factory tour. Thank you all for listening. Does anyone have any questions?